the hidden world beneath our feet. For thousands of years, long before the rise of cities, before kingdoms and empires carved borders into the earth, people believed the world was shared with beings far older than humankind. Beings made of shadow, light, and something far stranger. Today we call them fairies, but the truth is the original Celtic word wasn't fairy at all. It was Aos Sí, the people of the mounds. Source: The Book of Invasions, 11th century Irish compilation. This is the forgotten story of who they were, how they came to rule the hidden world, and why their world turned dark, tragic, and filled with sorrow. This is the true mythological history of the Fairies. Et circonstances. Kitan de chants sabers bebite beman stidin otter de comaneas. Sedi totam. Gefetis. The dawn before humans. The first age, when the world was young. Before humans came to the British Isles, Celtic mythology says the land belonged to ancient spirits, creatures of the wind, water and earth. They were not small, winged, sparkling beings. They were powerful, shape-shifting immortals. They lived in harmony with the land. The rivers were their pathways, the mountains their fortresses, the forests their halls. Among them existed a mysterious race, the Tuatha De Danann, meaning the tribe of the goddess Danu. They were radiant, skilled in magic, and capable of bending nature itself. Some legends say they travelled to Ireland in shimmering ships that hovered above the sea. Others say they descended as lightning, appearing on sacred hills at dawn. Either way, one thing is clear: they were not mortal. They were the beings who would eventually become the fairies. The war that shattered the old world. The arrival of humans and the Great Battle. When humans first came to the land, they were few, fragile and confused, but determined. According to Irish lore, the humans known as the Milesians arrived around 1000 BCE. At first, the Tuatha De Danann watched them quietly from the hills. They saw humans building huts, lighting fires, planting crops, trying desperately to survive. But humans multiplied quickly. They cut down trees without asking the forest spirits. They dammed rivers without offering tribute to the water gods. They hunted creatures believed to be sacred. The balance cracked. The Tuatha De Danann demanded the land back. The humans refused. And so began the First Great Battle, a war almost forgotten in modern times. The Battle of Tailtiu. The Tuatha De Danann summoned storms to sweep away human settlements. Humans fought back with bronze weapons, guided by druids who claimed visions of the gods. For days, rain fell like spears. For nights, the ground shook with magic. In the end, humans won, but only because the Tuatha De Danann chose not to destroy them completely. The goddess Danu, mother of the Danann, whispered that this world would soon belong to humans. So they vanished, or so people thought. The fall into the underworld. The Treaty of the Two Worlds. Instead of leaving the earth, the Tuatha De Danann made a pact. They agreed that humans would rule the surface, and they would rule everything beneath it. They retreated into ancient hills, caves and mounds called Sidhe, pronounced she. These underground kingdoms became the source of all fairy lore. This is why fairies are still called the Aos Sí, the people of the hills. The transformation over centuries, the Tuatha De Danann changed. Their bodies grew lighter. Their forms became more spirit than flesh. They blended with moonlight, mist, shadow and wind. They became the fair folk. But this transformation came at a tragic cost. The golden age of fairies, a world hidden from human eyes. The fairy realms were breathtaking. Tir na Nog, the land of eternal youth. Mag Mell, the plain of joy. The Underhill kingdoms, ruled by fairy queens and kings. The fair folk lived in harmony. Time did not touch them. They danced in moonlit forests, sang beside enchanted lakes, and crafted magic that shaped the seasons. But peace never lasts. Something dark grew in their world. The dark tragedy begins. The Shadow Rift, birth of the Dark Fae. The more humans expanded their world, the more the fairy realms shrank. Forests were cut, sacred stones were moved, rivers were polluted. As the natural world suffered, the fairies suffered too, because their life force was tied to nature itself. In Celtic beliefs, when a spirit becomes corrupted, its magic twists. The beautiful Aos Sí slowly split into two groups. The light Fae guardians of nature, protectors of the old ways, peaceful but growing weaker. The dark Fae, born from loss, anger and shrivelling forests. These beings took on frightening forms, shadowy, skeletal or monstrous. They fed on fear, grief and chaos. The split broke the fairy world forever. The War of the Fair Folk. The Silent Civil War. Celtic mythology rarely speaks openly about this war, but fragments from Scottish and Irish oral legends describe a night of sorrow. Source: Highlands Fairy Traditions, 17th century retellings. It was not a war humans could see. Battles were fought in the underworld, in storm clouds, in the shadows between trees. The light Fae tried to preserve balance. The dark Fae wanted revenge on humanity and the world that had abandoned them. The fairy queen, Eileen of the Silver Grove, fought to keep her people united. But in the end, she failed. The fairy world collapsed into scattered courts, isolated, distrustful, and afraid. The human-fairy encounters. Why humans saw fairies as dangerous. After the Civil War, fairies rarely trusted humans. When they did appear, their moods were unpredictable. The benevolent ones left gifts on doorsteps, healed the sick, led lost travellers home, blessed crops. The dark ones stole livestock, lured travellers into forests, swapped newborn babies for changelings, whispered nightmares into people's dreams. To humans, fairies became creatures of beauty and danger. Stories spread warning. Never follow fairy music. Never take food from the otherworld. Never speak your real name in a fairy glen. These warnings survive today in Celtic superstitions. Tragic fairy stories. The world never heard the fairy queen who loved a mortal. Source: Irish Changeling Tales, 1500s. Queen Eileen fell in love with a human poet who wandered into her realm. But the fairy and human worlds move at different speeds. One night in her world was 100 years in his. She visited him again, only to find him turned to dust. Heartbroken, she vowed never to love a human again. The child of two worlds. Source: Scottish Sealy Court legends. A human baby wandered into a fairy ring. The Light Fae raised her as one of their own. But when she grew older, she saw both worlds, the beauty of the light and the suffering of the dark. When she returned to her human family, she aged rapidly and died within days. Her body could not survive the shift between worlds. The fairy who lost her wings. Source: Welsh folklore of lake spirits. A water fairy named Lyrala fell in love with a fisherman. As tradition required, she hid her wings in a stone to live as a human. The fisherman's jealous brother found the wings and destroyed them. Lyrala was trapped between worlds, with no home in either. She turned into a wandering spirit, forever searching for the place she once belonged. The fall of the fair folk. Why the fairy world faded. As the centuries passed, forests were cleared, lakes dried, old stone circles were destroyed, rituals honouring the Aos Sí were forgotten without belief, without nature. Fairies grew weaker. By the 1800s, the Aos Sí had faded into tiny winged creatures in children's books, not the ancient gods they once were. Fairies didn't disappear. They simply stepped deeper into the otherworld, unseen, waiting, watching, surviving in the wildest corners of the land. The final prophecy of the fair folk. According to an old prophecy whispered by druids, when the forests rise again and the rivers heal, the Aos Sí will return in their true form. Some say the fairies are not gone. They are resting, gathering strength, waiting for the world to remember them. Every time someone touches an ancient standing stone, walks through a misty forest, or leaves food on Samhain night, the fair folk stir. The fairy world still lives. Fairies were never meant to be tiny, harmless creatures with glittery wings. They were ancient, powerful, tragic, beautiful, and sometimes terrifying. They represent what humans have forgotten: our bond with nature, the consequences of greed, the power of imagination, and the belief that the world is more mysterious than we can understand. Whether they exist physically or only in the realm of myth, one thing is certain: fairies never truly die. They simply wait for us to believe again.